and a special welcome to all of our guests, especially the Karituwhenua Trust and Jill Snelling, who are the two people who are receiving awards from us today. So in the first instance, could I invite the team from Havelock up first? We're waiting. Oh, Michelle has returned, we could have done it. That's all right. So if you can come up to the front.
Doing the Hawke tunnel. This is the worst place to sewage straight under it. Just bloody messes my hair up.
Yeah.
I can blow it off.
So it's a great pleasure for me to award Karituwhenua Land Trust this award. It's award. What's the actual definition of the award
is the environmental action in the community.
That's right. Environmental action in the community. And just for everybody's record here, so this is a group of people in Havelock who have taken it upon themselves to look after a stream. And they've planted it, they've cleared it, and it's a stream that leads into the Karama. And if you look at the big Karama map, you'll see that there's an enormous amount of streams and waterways leading into the Karama, and of course that's where the problems from the Karama come from. And actually I discovered this stream by chance really, because I was going for a walk with my wife, and she said there's a walkway there, we crossed the road, and I just couldn't believe how beautiful it was. So it's a great credit, and I have to tell the story because Rick and I I said to Rick, we've got to go and see these guys, and we went along for one of their sessions, their planting sessions, and I've got to tell you, the planting session starts at 9, goes for an hour, and everyone's cleaning up and rushing around and doing things. And then at 10 o'clock they have an hour of work, and then at 10 o'clock they have a smoko for an hour with cream scones, so they know how to do it properly. They have a big container there, and if any of you want to visit them, I'm absolutely certain you would be welcome to visit.
As long as you show up at 9, not at...
And the other thing that I'd like to say about them is this is a group of people that have just got on with it. They've just got on with it. And I had a look at their P&L, and there's a little $150 from us and $180, and these figures aren't exact, but little amounts of money that they've got from various institutions in the community such as us. And then there was this $6,000 that they had got from their own community by going around and asking, and there's a big residence there, and there's the whole community is, there's quite a few over 60s, so Rick and I felt quite at home there, up there. So these are people that actually, when they went and said, look, we need a little bit of money, these people that dug into their own pockets, people who many of them could ill afford to, and created the capital for the blokes who do go there with shovels and forks and trimmers to enable them to do the job. So this is a wonderful example of a community gathering together and doing something together for the good of the rest of us. So I just can't speak more highly really of all of you, and say that Rick and I enjoyed the day. It was really tremendous. So well done, and you deserve this award, because something which I would say to Jill and I would say to you is the Regional Council is charged to protect the environment, but we cannot do it without the support of local communities such as yourself and people that are getting out and doing it. And there's lots of examples in Forest and Bird and communities like you and individuals who are getting on and doing it. But you're not, and you're not alone in this, but there's a large part of our community who don't. And so you're an inspiration to them to say, you know, they can do something too. And I think more and more we're finding people that will actually get in and do it themselves, and we absolutely need that to happen. So, who will I give this award to?
Pass it on. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
On behalf of our community, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if you're to give a few words.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you.
greatly appreciated. It is appreciated.
You're going to hang that in the container?
Well, certainly so to the group on Friday morning anyway. For those that don't know where we are, we're off Timata Road, just on the village side of the Kings Gate roundabout. Only got a small entrance into our reserve there, but it extends about just under 1 kilometre up, following the stream up. It's quite a narrow beginning to it, through mainly natives that have all been planted over the last 25 years that we've been doing it. And as you go up through the stream, it opens up. We've got grassed areas that we mow, and we've got exotics up at the top end, including oak trees that were planted back in the 1880s, so they're quite magnificent. So it's a great little walk. Great bird life, tui, Karituwhenua, bellbird, few blackbirds and those ones as well, but the native bird life there is spectacular, particularly in spring. It's really energetic place to be. As Rick said, we go out to the community when we need to. We do a letterbox drop around the area, and the support that we get is just phenomenal, really is. And that's one of our larger fundraising efforts from the local community. The local dogs, they love the reserve. It's an off-leash area, and they love going up through there as well. We have some kindergartens that come up regularly. This week there's one from Hastings comes over in minibuses, and they go up with the kids, and they have a little picnic up there, particularly in summer, and they try and do it in winter as well if the weather's fine. So the whole community appreciates what we're doing, and we love it. There's about 16 to 18 of us that normally work on the front, very hard. Mainly men. Well, it's all men. The women leave us to our own devices there, but we have a very good system where we have a roster with the ladies to provide us with money.
Keeps us off the street, doesn't it?
It does for a couple of hours. The Hastings District Council, they've used us as an example to try and get other groups doing the same thing within Havelock North. And there's two groups that we're aware of that had started as a result of us. One is up Turua, the reserve up there. The council's got the locals involved there. And we've got some opposition just on the other side of Timata Road now, behind Palmbrook. Council have been trying to get a group going there, and they've just started this year to start clearing up that part of the stream going down behind Palmbrook. So, yep, it's great to see that. We don't see them as a threat to our existence. We love to see that happening. So, carry on as long as we can doing it. So, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Yes. Rick will be back for those green skies. Hey, look, this is a human. Human, it's all those signs. So we have two awards this year, and the other one is to Jules Snelling. So Jules, could you come up, please? For environmental leadership. Now, I only met Jules for the first time 5 minutes ago, so I'm going to hand over. Oh, karakia. We're going to do a karakia, aren't we? Well, now you're not.
I've taken off the te hei Māori ora, tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou, ko tai mai I te rā rohe o Ngāti Karituwhenua, ara te wairo, nō reira piki mai ka ke mai. Ka nui te koho ki te kite hi o koutou, whakameharo ki o koutou mō o mahi I te tai ao I te rā rohe, nō reira tēnei te mihi atu. Engari tēnei wā, pai nō, ki hoki o mātou whakaro ki a rātou kuru peka atu ki tiu o te rai. Nō reira, koutou aho koko whitiurangi tia tēnei te mihi atu. Hare atu koutou ki rongi e tō mātou aroha. Nō reira koutou, kia kaha mā, ka nui te aroha me te whakamihara mō koutou mahi hua, hei tauira mō ngā whakatupuranga ka heke mai nei. Just like to thank you, and as a Wairoa ratepayer, and I said to Fenton, see up in the hill there, that hospital, a famous Maori was born there, and he said, who? And I said, me, mate. And it's wonderful to see the Regional Council are very aware of the huge problems with erosion, especially in the Te Wairoa area, and them and Ngāti Kahungunu, and indeed some of the government agencies are looking forward. But it's the home-grown people like yourselves that are getting up there and getting your hands dirty are the real strength of any program. And just the other group gone, have they all? Yep, and I'm looking forward to when I turn 60 so I can go up there and help to eat those scones.
Thank you, Mike. As I said, I only met Jill 5 minutes ago, so in a minute I'm going to hand over to Fenton. But Jill, I have heard a lot about you. Leadership is the real key to this. I'm glad you've got this leadership because people in Wairoa do talk about you in a very high esteem, and you're showing the way. And it's a great credit to you that these people, many people in this room today, have travelled all the way from Wairoa to honour and respect you as you get this award. And I can forgive you for anything because when I first met you, you said you'd heard that I was lovely. So we're trying to get that into the press somehow.
But before that, I said, who are you?
My name precedes me. So Fenton, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, welcome, Jill. I know this is not your natural space in front of people here. Just a little bit about Jill, and then I'd like to hear from her as well, obviously. So I grew up next to Jill. Her mum, before her, was a champion for biodiversity and hill country preservation, if you like, but also a pretty tough farmer, and she did it. Her mum, I'm talking about, did it in spite of the neighbours at times, and in spite of male influences. She got on and did her thing, and I've watched Jill over my lifetime do exactly the same thing. She's a pretty successful beef breeder in her own right. She quite often tops the wheat fairs in our local town, but she's decided, and obviously she can tell us a bit about this, she's decided to enhance the natural biodiversity of her piece of paradise up there. And anyone who drives up to Tukamakihi, looking on the left, you see a big lake, you see a beautiful home, and you see a massive expanse of regenerating bush, and that's all down to Jill. She's spurned the use of spray. She's been out there with slashes cutting blackberry. The best use for plastic bags is to tie them in the trees to keep the deer away from the at-risk plants, and because it is quite a haven for venison up there. I first really got to know Jill. She used to, as a teacher, take all the kids that no one else really wanted and take them up there and introduce them to what's happening on the land and sustainable values. And I used to teach them how to shear, which was, and Jill was a pretty mean shearer in her day as well, which we probably won't talk about that. But yeah, look, it's a real pleasure to have an opportunity to recognise what you've done. I know this is completely foreign to you and you don't want to be anywhere near the front of the room, but well done. And in my lifetime it's been a real pleasure to be able to recognise what you've done. So.
Do I talk now?
Now it's your time.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
Okay, right. I've just only got notes because, so where I'm going to start is at the beginning, which is, I grew up, well, Fenton's family bought part of our family farm, and I grew up as absolutely my mother teaching us about biodiversity, and she and I would go out as children. She was not a child, but I'd go out with her and cut a little scrub, and always the riparian edges were left, always. She was English, and she had gotten used to hedgerows and things. And so grew up there. Then I did some study and went overseas and was in Europe for 5 years and met my husband, who's a Canadian, and we then moved across to Canada. And there, you know, if you've been there, you just drive for 3 days straight and you've gotten nowhere. And all of it was botany, everywhere. There was just botany. That's my thing, plants. And then in the winter, there's no botany, it's just snow. And there's no green. And for where we lived, was 7 months of the year, there was no green. And in here, something was really dying, this need to be having plants. And wherever we moved, I began to put in big, not gardens, but big areas of trees, start planting them. And then I went to university there and I worked with the world's leading mistletoe expert, a parasitic plant professor, Dr. Hawke. And if you look him up on the internet, there's just Google 123, whatever. And I became his herbarium person. And when I took classes with him, he would have plant morphology as my senior class, and I would be drawing the plants, and they don't have a buzzer going, but you know the students are ready for another lecture, and they would bolt, and I hadn't finished all my morphology drawings, and I can remember I must have been a real wimp. I'd end up in tears because he was going to gather my unfinished morphology drawings. And so we did an independent study on plants for a botanical illustration, because he said you can't find botanical illustrators, and they're always the ones that give you the best scientific drawings. So he took me for half a year. He was a wonderful illustrator. He couldn't find them, so he learned. He took half a year and he said, if the art department will take you, I'm getting to the end of the story, if the art department will take you, you can then do fine arts in botanical illustration. So he took my best drawing across to the fine arts department, and I got accepted into the art department, and things, if you haven't tried life, I was the top student, and yet all of these kids had come in as fine art students. So in there's this beautiful thing that's hiding somewhere if you'll just let it out. And then, so always now, when I landscape our farm, it's all about fine arts and botany. So, you know, I'm getting a bit distracted, but you know the wealthy American up at Gisborne who owned Nick's Head? He brings in a landscape architect from America. You don't need that. You just look at that hill and the trees will tell you you have foreground depth of view, and you begin to landscape the whole of your farm, and the bush will grow very high. I won't talk about central, anyway. So then, so that was the key. Oh, and my mum, I was going to go to Brazil to lead ahead of him in front of all the bulldozers destroying the Amazon forest, putting big roads through for progress. And Hawke asked me if I would go as his collector of plants ahead of the bulldozers. And then my mum arrived out of the blue. I hadn't seen her in 17 years. Hunched over, a little wee woman arrived, wild and woolly from Wairoa, and had to meet up with my in-laws that are so cityfied, like looking in the paper for bargains in the mall. And my mum would go missing, and the neighbours began to recognise her. She was way out in the beautiful meadows of the prairies looking at wildflowers, and they'd have to drag my mum back and put her back in the city. So we then went out west to where we were living in southern Alberta, and my mum asked us if we would be interested in coming back onto the farm because she was old and crippled. And so it was going to go to EIT and for a research farm, and all of the tangle of all of that. We waited 5 years and we came back, and the farm had been somewhat farmed, meaning it was paddocks that had grass on them, and paddocks that were just beginning to regenerate. I don't ever say the word scrub anymore. Karituwhenua and manuka, beautiful trees. Karituwhenua, a foul word to most farmers. It's the most wonderful tree. And you don't need to fence it, cattle won't eat it, nothing touches it. If you've got no money, come up and get seed from us and it'll grow. And then it forms a quick canopy, and underneath all of that come, the birds sit up there and poo. They become what Marie Taylor from Plant Hawke's Bay calls poo trees. You get a poo tree, and there you've got tawa, and there you've got titoki, and all of those trees. So, oh, he's waving his hand, that was the signal to get on. So in amongst it all, I've QE2'd right from the beginning, and the people if it hadn't been for QE2, so it started off with old Tiny White, the All Black, went through to Malcolm Piper, who was the fat man buying cows with fat bottoms man, through, and I showed him how to look at fantails and not at fat cows, and then through to Meg Gaddam, and it was really good as a woman having support from another woman because she understood botany. Then it went through to a present one, who is Malcolm Rutherford, who's an ecologist, and we've got to represent QE2 here is, I did call him Todd yesterday.
Troy.
And that's the German word for death. It's Troy, sorry. Troy Duncan. And he's here. And if it hadn't been for QE2 and the support from them initially, because they were our original covenanters, and I went for a walk one day and saw a little black and white bird up in Baktahi, one of the paddocks, 120 acres. I'm too old for hectares. 120 acres. And I immediately had that whole paddock fenced for this. As my fencer said, you're wasting 120 acres for a bloody little black and white bird. Well, that's the North Island pied tomtit. And we have 62 species of bird on our property because we've got wetlands running all through from bogs and fens right through to open water. And then when that got closed, we did one covenant, but two fairly large, 72 acres in one and 120 in another. And then I began to protect all of the wetlands so that the stock couldn't get in there. And then anything native was allowed to grow. So there was this creeping, magical thing of native regenerating bush happening across the farm. And so we used to have 500 breeding ewes. I don't want to look at another sheep. We got rid of all of the sheep. And then gradually the cattle numbers have come down to my last cows. I'm 71 and I'm still chasing big, they're dying today, 3 cows at Waira Afco plant, my beautiful girls. So they're closing in, and finally I'll probably get rid of the cattle. We hope to turn the whole, it's 450 acres, it's not big, into a QE2 block so that nobody can ever plant another, and I'm going to swear, bloody pine tree anywhere near us because we have pine forests all around us with pollen and seedlings, and I said I'd be good today, but I could use another word about pine trees. So in our covenant, the regeneration is unbelievable. Every time I go out, there are new native orchids. Mike Lusk has been my mentor. Helen Jonas, Doc in Wairau, connected me to Mike Lusk. And he's like my lovely mad scientist, like my Yobkite professor. He and I are always down looking for mischief down somewhere in the grass there. And then in amongst that, Doc put up an archaeologist because our land, and I will give you the whakapapa of our land, before nature made it, but it was confiscated land. And in here burns a big, deep, sad thing. Yeah, give me a minute. That it's confiscated land. And the boy next door's got the other half of it. And it was taken by the Board of Education to be for, there's 2 little schools. They've closed now, but they had 6 kids or 3 kids or whatever. One on Big Tukamukihi Station and the other on Aniwa. And it was to pay for the teachers for those schools. And all over our place, we have a po in the end of our lake for a rope or canoe to be tied to, waka. All through you see whare sites. So that's all been documented. I just feel, and I go by, we have remnant bush with trees that are big and hard, and I go by there and I think I just sit quietly by them and you could feel your ancestors or people from Wairau, the women from Wairau, walking past all of those, getting seasonal kai from our land. And the only thing, I'm not caring about humans anymore. I record every single thing on our place. The diversity is so compounding so quickly by having bush that's just for every habitat that I record. I just have a photo. Oh, he's told me to shut up.
No, never. I'm not that game. I'm not that game. Just saying you're just, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going over
Otherwise
time,
you'll have to
sorry.
become a counsellor and you wouldn't like that. I know that.
Anyway, what the point being that I must thank, the Regional Council came on board for our second covenants. We've had 3 done, and they paid for a third of the fencing. QE2, we then dare-proofed. That was a huge grant from QE2. I'm going to shut up here, but the boy next door to me, who's bought the other part, which was one big farm originally, he's the new generation of young men, and he's part of what's called a farming, what's it called? Discussion group. It's a hair-raising thing for me to hear. And I said to him, do you find other young men like you? Because he comes to me to ask me how to get bush to grow on his property. He has strong ecological values, and they've got a beautiful QE2 block full of rimu, and there's no rimu around our place. They're the rimu hub. And he wants to now, he went with Malcolm Rutherford, the QE2 man, he wants to protect 2 of the streams. He's got probably a $2 million bill to pay. But he's the start of the new generation, and I said to him, do you find it easy to talk about scrub? Because he called it scrub, Karituwhenua and Manukau. And he said not a single person in that group wants to hear about that. They're farming for profit. That young man needs the regional council to go and help support. I'm speaking for him, you don't have to. But he's the new me over the fence, is that young man. You know of whom I speak, yes. And he's got 3 little children, and 2 of those little girls are little eco-warriors as well. The boy's got a gun and shoots things. But the 2 little girls are little eco-warriors.
Check the neighbour on the other side.
And I'm not
that's me.
all on there, but anyway. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Jill.
Teenagers.
Thank you very much. And you didn't need notes. Thank you for everyone for coming and
Listen to
supporting.
every 6 months.
That's all right. This is the seed collecting group. What here he is. But these wonderful women come now and collect seeds for the restoration of the Wairua River. And we had a wānanga on our place, and it was the most, what's the word for it? Gentle, serene, just composed lot of women wanting to learn about trees and how to restore their land. Gentle, gentle. Well, she's pretty stroppy, but
We know that.
This also started the title called Jill. She's the source, as she said, source of all our seeds that we're growing. We're growing natives, and me and Susie for in a million and I raised about 2,500 trees. I don't know how many you've got, but she's been teaching us all about biodiversity. And in my, now I'm going to tell, in my support letter for her award, she epitomises true kaitiakitanga. So, kia ora.
Thank you very much. Now, councillors, we're back into public excluded.
I'm happy to move, Chair.
So everyone, we're going to have to excuse you because we are
thank
making
you
some...
everybody for listening.
Thank you very much
Thanks,
for all
Jill.
the work you guys have done.
Michelle.
Thanks, team.